Welcome to my talk. We still have a few people coming in, filling in the empty seats, but we'll make a start so that you all get out of here in time for your next session. My name is Eva Murray. I'm Head of BI and Tableau Evangelist at Exasol. And as part of that role, apart from leading the BI team, I do this kind of stuff. So being at Tableau conference, engaging with the community, but also I lead our philanthropy projects, and that's with working with nonprofits. Some of you, hopefully, know me through a project called Makeover Monday, which I run with Andy Kriebel, sitting in the front row as usual. And if you don't know what Makeover Monday is, it's a weekly social data project where we provide an original visualization, a chart we find somewhere on the web, and an article as well as a data set to go with it. And we ask our community to create a makeover, to tell a better data story using the same data set, because there is a ton of really, really bad visualizations out there in the wild, and we want to change that. If you're interested in joining us, it happens every week. Just go to makeovermonday.co.uk. You'll find the data sets there. You'll find makeovers, blog posts, etc. So it would be great to have you along. As part of that project, we're also currently in the process of writing a book. And our friends here are probably sick of seeing this slide because we pull it out every time we have a chance. This book is coming out in October, and aside from including a bunch of lessons learned throughout the years that Makeover Monday has been running, we're also showcasing over 300 visualizations that the community has created to show how we try and improve the way we visualize and analyze data one chart at a time. When I'm not sitting in front of a screen, I really enjoy early mornings and sunrises. And what I try to do is combine that with a lot of cycling. I used to do triathlons, but then I realized that doing my job and trying to be competitive in 3 different sports all at once is not quite realistic. So then I decided to just change to cycling, and now I try and go for a bike ride wherever I can. And some people might think the only reason why I ride my bike so much is to make up for all the gelato that I eat along the way. Yeah, I really like gelato. So now you know pretty much everything that's worth knowing about me at this point. So let's get into the talk. I would like a show of hands in the audience who is an analyst, information designer, data scientist working with data. How many of you in the room? Okay, the majority, great. Do we have anyone in charge of a team of analysts? Yeah, there's a few. And do we have any senior decision makers and executives? Yes, 2, great. It's good to have all of you along because this talk is for you. It's for the analysts and information designers. It's for the team leaders and influencers, but also for the decision makers and executives. So it's great to have you here. But before we get too comfortable with each other, let's remind ourselves of the topic. Dataviz comfort zone. What does that even mean? What is your Dataviz comfort zone? Is it about bar charts and line charts on a 2x2 dashboard? Or is it about getting bored with what you typically create? Or maybe feeling stifled by the corporate design standards that you have in your organization? Well, the point I want to make is that a lot of dashboards don't actually say a whole lot. They contain lots of visuals, a lot of noise, but when it comes to conveying information, they can be really quiet. Some contain things that are not that meaningful, and others have a lot of information but aren't insightful. And then there are dead-end dashboards, as my friend Andy Cotgrave calls them. And these are often canned reports that are provided to an audience in the same format over a long period of time, and they don't change, and they don't really evolve with the needs of the user. Who has those in the organization? Yeah? Okay, great. Who is maybe unsure whether you have them in your organization? You might think that the dashboards are being used, but you don't know for sure whether they are. If that's you, as a side note, I would recommend you look at your usage statistics of Tableau server. Just have a look how many people actually access the dashboard in the last 2-3 weeks, 2-3 months, last year. We're doing, at Exasol, we're actually doing that because when I took over the BI team a year ago, when it actually became the BI team, we also took over a lot of legacy stuff. So we're trying to clean out all the old reports that no one's actually looking at, that someone created for a single purpose at one point in time, but they're still there lingering around. Okay, you probably remember I like cycling. I told you that much about 2 minutes ago. And to track my activities and my goals and achievements, I use a platform called STRAVA. Who's familiar with STRAVA in the room? Yeah, okay, about a quarter, good. So I track everything I do on my Garmin watch. I'm quite obsessed with it. So even if I just go to work in the morning, it's about 2 miles. That gets tracked because I need all the kilometers I can get, or miles. And my watch then, the data is synchronized with STRAVA. And STRAVA is basically a social network for athletes. And STRAVA displays the information in various dashboards and visualization. Well, they call it the dashboard, which is just like the activity feed. But it also lets me connect to other people and see what they've been doing. The problem with the dashboards and visualization Strava gives me is that they haven't evolved over time. So they are those canned visualizations I just spoke about. I use them pretty much every day. I look at them, but I don't get a lot of value out of them personally to change my behaviors or improve my performance as an athlete. And I would like to move away from them, but they're so convenient and they're in the app and they're on the web, so that's why I tend to still use them. So in this case, it's really Strava that's stuck in their Dataviz comfort zone. And I want to show you what that looks like. The first one is what's called the Strava training log. And on the left-hand side, you see the dashboard. The right is just an image to kind of fill the page. On the left-hand side, you see this activity log. I think the structure is quite logical. You've got, for every week, you have a row, and then the columns are the weekdays. The circles show you individual activities, and there's different types. So there's the workout, where I specify something as a workout, that's yellow. The grey ones have no specification, and then if I were to do a race, it's orange. And the circle is sized by, in this case, the distance travelled, or distance ridden. And on the left-hand side of each row, you see a few key numbers. So you have the dates, what the week was. Just below it, in very small font, you see the duration and the elevation and then the kilometers. The only reason why I picked those weeks is because I was my training leading up to a race and I just really wanted to show off. So there's no other reason for it. Now, what I'm missing here is on the left, you see, if you can actually see it, a green line, and above it, it says goal, 150 kilometers. I set that up in Strava as my weekly target, and yeah, it's green, but I can't really see here whether I've achieved my target. It's, I have to really think about it. Also, I have to even see it in the first place, because to me, the circles are really what dominates this whole visualization. It's also hard to compare the circles to each other. I've got the number, yes, but if I were to just look at the circles and the sizing, the ones on the right all look quite similar. In the middle, the 146 looks quite similar size to 161 kilometers, even though there's quite a difference. So I don't like that type of visualization. I typically have a quick glance at it, but I know what I've done, so it's not that valuable for me. I did a brief makeover. It's quite simple, but I start on the left-hand side with just a simple bar chart for every week, and a line going down with the target. So that's the 150 kilometers, because I just want to see, did I hit my target or not? Right next to it, I'm actually using what we call big-ass numbers, bands. And yes, they're not really a visualization, they're not a very visual thing, but to me, seeing the actual number of kilometers is something that, for me, is a good reference point. So I have the kilometers, and then the duration for the week. And then I go down into a daily breakdown. So I can see where the gaps are. That's maybe off days or days when I did a run instead. No, I don't. I don't run. And I have the numbers on every bar, so I can see what the actual distance was per day. And on the right-hand side, I added a metric that just shows the average time per day. So literally, I just took the entire duration and divided it by 7. Below, I also added how far did I go over those 6 weeks, that 6-week period, how far did I go in that time, with a large number at the end, so just over 2,000 kilometers, which is great because I have a yearly target of 7,000, and then in this bullet chart I can see how far or how much has that period contributed to that overall target. And I also like using the new step lines that you have now available in Tableau, little feature pitch here. So that was a simple makeover just for me to give me something a bit different to work with. Then we come to a calendar. Strava gives me this calendar showing what I've done in a particular month. And what I really like about the calendar is it's very intuitive. Everyone knows how to read a calendar. we have the month of May, and there's a box or a square for every day, and then the activities listed. But in this case, again, there's quite a few things missing. What it tells me is, okay, there's a few days where I didn't do anything. There's a few days where I did more than one thing. There's some red lines and green lines that aren't explained anywhere. And there's names for activities, but there isn't really any insight. Maybe Strava didn't intend for that, but I also don't get any detail about the activities. So if I were to hover over these, I get nothing. I can just click on them, go to the individual activity. So again, with the calendar, I try to change it up a little bit and simplify it to show me what I really care about. And that's, funnily enough, numbers, but also just a bit more simplification. Get rid of the names. No reason for the cat picture to be in there, but I liked it. So I can see the gaps more clearly. There's 3 days in week 20 where I was actually traveling and I didn't get a chance to ride my bike. So there's a big gap there. I can also see, because I've added weekly totals and weekday totals, that Mondays are my kind of lightest days because they come straight after Sundays, which are my heaviest days. So that's when I typically do the most distance. And I have the totals, and at the top I actually added a selection with a parameter for kilometers versus miles, just depending on the audience I want to show this to. So for me, this is something a bit simpler and still can be used as a calendar. And then there is this. And this is actually a dashboard that comes from the Garmin website rather than Strava. And the railway lines are meant to be the dead-end dashboard thing. I hope that kind of makes sense. But before I go into critiquing this dashboard, I want to suggest that we can, for ourselves, have a little bit of a checklist or framework for how we assess visualizations. They should be clear and easy and quick to understand at a first glance. Yes, when you go into really analyzing or finding insights, you might have to dig a bit deeper. But at first glance, you shouldn't be confused. You should be intrigued, and some things should pop out quite clearly. The colors should be meaningful, and the layout should be quite effective, maybe from most important information to the least important, or from the most recent to the, going to the history, etc. So that's some considerations. But also, what I personally really like is having titles and annotations that explain something and add some value, maybe a little bit of an insight of, this data point is really important or really interesting because of X, Y, Z. And then, depending on the context or the use, the purpose of the dashboard, is it actionable? So, in this dashboard, what I find really interesting, so they give me these donut charts, gauges, I'm not quite sure what they're supposed to be. They're all green, which seems to mean that I've achieved my target for these metrics. Well, the metrics are steps, stairs climbed, and intensity minutes. I don't really care so much about how many steps I walked, because with all the cycling I do, it doesn't really matter how much I walk. But I do get told that I haven't walked enough steps, even if I've done 5 hours of cycling. I also don't care so much about the stairs climbed, but it's all there, right? So that's the default setup. And then the intensity minutes actually is calculated by Garmin themselves with some formula. So I don't even know what that means, because it doesn't add up to the minutes of actual activity I've done. It just is some formula that tells me how intense they were, or how many intense ones. Okay, there's my heart rate. That's fine. It's interesting. I'm going to try this laser pointer. So in the bottom left corner, there's a chart about my weight and my goal weight. And what I find interesting here is there's clearly, there's a target, that's the black line. There's the green line, which is above, so that's not a good thing. But what do I do with this? Why doesn't Garmin tell me, hey, go to this website, maybe start tracking your calories, or maybe do this to lose some weight? Clearly there is some call to action that could be included. Sorry? Gelato. Yes, maybe Garmin should check my Instagram feed and figure out I eat too much gelato. And also there's a chart about the movement I have while I sleep. And I don't really mind whether I move or not. What I would really like to know, is it normal? Is it good? Is it bad? At least give me that. Or tell me, what does it mean if I move a lot or don't move that much? So to me, this dashboard is pretty much useless. There's also quite a lot of color going on, and the colors mean different things in different tiles on the dashboard. So my recommendation here would be, hey Garmin, just simplify it and maybe ask me what metrics I want to see. Okay. That's to be a dead-end dashboard. But there are some things, I want to say, that are old and stale, but they're cool, like a lot of things in Paris. But dashboards don't follow those rules, because if you don't iterate on the dashboards and keep them fresh and meaningful in some way, they're going to die a slow death on your Tableau server. So what I want to argue is that to really get outside your Dataviz comfort zone, it's to go beyond the visual. It's not just about the visualization and how to change it and how to improve it, but it's also a lot about cultural change. And you heard that in the keynote, and that worked in as a kind of very nicely lead into my talk. James talked about it, Clive talked about it, the change that has to happen in the mindset and also the processes to make all of this possible. So I'm going to, in the next few slides, have a bunch of suggestions for the 3 different groups that we've identified in the room. We've got the analysts, we've got the team leaders, we've got the decision makers and executives, so that we can look at how you can drive that change to really get your analytics to the next level. So first up, the analysts and information designers. My key recommendation for you would be to be brave. And as you're the person that is working with the data day in, day out, you're creating reports, you're developing these dashboards and analyzing data to find information that you can share, you also have the chance to change things at a very elementary level, because you can just change the design, be a little bit of a rebel in there and change how people consume the information and the insights that you provide. So you can drive the improvements, but for that you need to challenge the status quo. And I'm not sure what it means for you to be brave. In my view, it's about acknowledging and recognizing that you're actually the expert when it comes to data. You will have stakeholders in the business who know what questions they have, but they're not the experts in analyzing and communicating the information. So really consider yourself the expert. Really give yourself that permission. Don't feel, oh, I've only used Tableau for 2 weeks or for 2 months. There are things that you're an expert at, and combine those into your role. Through that, you have the ability to influence people and to really make that change happen, but also to guide them, to gently nudge them in the right direction. But how do we do that? So I'm going to go through these practical steps. We don't want to leave it at the abstract. The first thing is to always work on improving your skills, because that's the only way to stay on top of things and also to really establish yourself and your expertise in the organization. It's also important to speak up, and that can be a very difficult thing to do, but it's important that you communicate your opinions and your insights to the people around you, and to keep an open mind. I see a lot of situations, and we've had them as well, where people say, oh, can you build me a dashboard with a pie chart in the top left and it shows this and this and this, and then I want a bar chart and a line chart, and can you add these 10 filters all around it? No. Don't let people tell you how to design the dashboard that you're building for them. Of course, involve them in the process, but first and foremost, ask them what their questions are. They come with the question, you will find the answers, and then the design can be an iterative process where you show them a first draft of how you would visually communicate this information, let them give you some feedback, and work on iterating together, going back and forth until you have a dashboard that suits their purpose, but is also adhering to some best practices, and just is going to be used by a broad audience. Taking feedback is also important. People need to have the chance to tell you, whether the work that you've created for them works for them, but also giving feedback, being constructive in that regard as well. And then, of course, sharing your skills and knowledge. And again, in the keynote, you heard a lot about the community, and I think that's what really makes Tableau so different from so many other products, is this community that's willing to share what they know and what they're passionate about, and to make that available for everyone, be it through blog posts, social media, instructions, how-tos, videos, etc. They have podcasts, everything. So giving back and sharing your skills is also a chance for you to see, have you really understood what you're talking about? Because as soon as you teach someone, you really have to be able to put it into words. It's not just in your head, it's verbalizing and instructing. So that's a great way to check. Then you're on to some quick wins. It's a really good idea to take a small self-contained project, if you're just at the start, and find a way that you can achieve a quick win that helps you establish some change. So if you want to change the way, for example, that you communicate or that you gather requirements or that you work with a client, like I just said, around this iterative process, meeting with people, getting their feedback, and then going back, changing your dashboard, getting feedback again. Finding a small project with hopefully a nice stakeholder can be a good way to establish yourself, have a quick win, and use that internally as a use case, as an example, to convince people that this way of working is going to be successful. So for those quick wins, it's a good way to prove your ability. It helps you showcase what skills you have. And then it's also a way that you can refine your skills, because in that iterative process, of course, you will change things, but you might also need to, maybe it's as simple as, oh, we need to build a new calculation into this dashboard, and I don't really know how to do this. So you go on the forums, you go on social media, you find out, you connect with other people, and in that process, you learn. And when it comes to asking for feedback, I would recommend to not just take it at face value. Don't just let someone tell you what to do and you just do it, but also really understand the feedback. If you've asked for, let's say, the syntax for a calculation, really ask people how that works. Why do I need to write this syntax to make this calculation work and to make it display the information in the dashboard that way? Make sure that you really understand it, because that obviously helps you to then use it over and over again. So what are some ways that you can leave your Dataviz comfort zone in your day-to-day work? I've prepared a couple of examples where I've created visualizations that are a bit different from the typical line charts and bar charts that I like to stick to. That's my Dataviz comfort zone when it really comes down to the data visualization. And they took a few iterations to get to the final product. So the first one is a data set about ozone, it's air quality index data. And this is about ozone levels in the US. What I typically don't do are these dot plots, and I really like them. I think they're a great way to visualize a large amount of data. You see that there's a lot of detail. These are all the different measurement stations in the different states for the West region in this case, so I've filtered based on the map. And I've also left a lot of white space. I do typically have white space, but this is more than I normally have. And then I try to place the text annotations in a way that it still has a flow, but there's also, it highlights the viz. These are just some of the visualizations I created in the process of getting to this previous visualization. So just using the data and throwing it into Tableau, literally just dragging and dropping different fields into the view so that I can create a few visuals and then pick and choose. And I don't really delete the rest, but maybe I just hide them. And I also, for this, took a lot of inspiration from the data visualization community, especially the Makeover Monday community, because we had this data set for Makeover Monday in the past. And I looked at some, and because I wanted to build a demo using this ozone data, I just thought, what have other people built? So in the bottom left corner, these small multiple maps, that was done by Ethan Mavrantonis, who was competing in IronViz last year. And he had a really beautiful dashboard using this visualization. The one on the top left was created by Andy. And so I just went through, had a look at the different ones, tried to recreate them, and then come to my final dashboard. A very different example is this makeover I created for Makeover Monday. So March Madness is this US college basketball tournament. Yeah, good, I got that one right. I got the sport right. But I know nothing about basketball, and we used this data set, and I was completely out of my depth. And it was more about the topic, not so much the visualization. I really had to research the topic and get my head around, what does the data even mean? Like, how can I visualize something I know I really don't understand, but everyone in the community seems to understand and be crazy about? So I aimed for something that's very simple, but that also tells a little bit of a story. So this is about upsets. I just picked a small subset of the data and focused on visualizing that. So not the most out there visual, but the research that went into it and the work and the background, that was really outside my comfort zone. And I'm glad we haven't touched basketball data since. Okay, now the last one is another quite simple visualization where my focus was to really focus just on the charts. The explanations on the left side, looking at the temperatures in the northern and southern hemisphere, they were really just for explanation or a little bit of annotation, but the middle, the red really should stand out. So I tried to focus on letting that come to the front. Okay, now we've spoken to the analysts in the room, but focusing on the team leaders, my key message is to let go. You're managing a team of really smart people and they're well capable, but you've probably also come from that. So I find myself in that same situation, having been an analyst in the past, and then you move into a role where you're managing people, you're not really in the detail anymore, but it's hard to let go and to stop telling them, oh, why don't you just try this? Oh, let me just do it for you. No, don't. Let go and let people do it. Because there's a better use of your time in trying to remove the obstacles people might face along the way, negotiating between stakeholders or between your team and the stakeholders, but also spending time on growing and developing talent in your team. Because that's going to really make a big difference. And again, in the keynote, you heard about what people are doing to grow their internal communities, to empower people, to give them the right tools and the right skills so they can grow for themselves and bring those new ideas and insights to the business that then add value. The first point is the feedback culture. So encouraging feedback, building a culture of continuous improvement is a really big step in the right direction. How do you build that right culture? It's about fostering continuous improvement, fostering training, and this willingness to learn for people to be excited. If the people in your team are anything like the rest of the Tableau community, then they're really excited to learn. And I hope that comes through in the sessions that you will attend and the conference vibe overall, that people really are passionate and they care about what they're doing with data. Training courses are a great thing to do. You might do them with an external provider, have someone come in, send your people on training courses, or maybe you just do internal sessions for each other. Conferences as well. So you're here. The question is, are people from your team here? And if not, could they please come next time? I think it's great to have people attend conferences. I fight for that. I know it's always a budget decision as well, travel costs, etc., and the tickets, but I would suggest just make it part of their annual performance plan. If people perform well to a certain point in time against their targets, why not make the reward an attendance at Tableau conference? Because it's going to be really motivating and it also attaches great value to being at the conference. They will make sure they really use their time here and they will come back so motivated and so excited to dive in and apply their new knowledge. So I've only experienced good things with people attending conference. Also for myself, because in the past I actually worked at a Tableau customer in Australia at Commonwealth Bank. And when I got to go to the conference, that was, for me, it was such an aha moment, meeting the community, seeing all the other people and what they do with data. So I would suggest let your people go to the conference. It's also a great place, of course, to network, aside from learning and connecting with people, but to network and just see what else is out there, what other customers are doing, what other partners are doing. And if you're worried about your people going to the conference and finding another job, ideally make sure they don't want to leave. So yes, of course it can happen, but if you set the right scene and the right context for their work, then hopefully they won't leave. And then lastly, attracting and recruiting talent. So having an engaged team is great and is a great way for you to communicate to the outside world what you're all about, that you are working in data, that you are passionate about it and attracting the right people to join you. There is this idea around mentoring, and Clive mentioned it in his talk, but also my friend Mark from Groupon, he's doing a parallel session so he can't be here, but he has this approach where he provides mentoring to his team members, and for every hour he gives, they have to give 2 hours to others, so that you pay it forward and you make people help each other. That way they will learn for themselves, but also by teaching, they're going to get so much better at what they're doing. Okay, then when it comes to the approach, I want to suggest a balance between best practices but also the freedom to be creative. You need that structure but also inspiration to really get things right when it comes to data visualization, communicating the information, but also driving that cultural change. So we want to encourage best practices, but we also want to have the option to adopt ideas, maybe from some other disciplines. So you could, maybe you're in finance or you're in healthcare. Why not look at sports or things like military, the arts, healthcare, education, to see what they're doing with data, how they're visualizing data. They might have a certain style or a certain approach that you could use for your purposes. And then evaluate as a team what works and what doesn't. Why not sit around a table and say, hey, what if we did it this way? And get people a chance to give feedback and to hear everyone else's opinion and to really understand what everyone's point of view is. For this, I have a few examples of visualizations that have been used as inspirations for people to create to create visualizations on completely different topics. And they come from the community as well. So how can we apply what's happening in other disciplines to the work we do? Let's have a look. So this first visualization is a scorecard for the Washington Metropolitan Area Transit Authority. And this was created by Lindsay Poulter last year for Makeover Monday. Andy really liked this dashboard, so what he did was he turned it into a profit and loss statement that he could use to demo to clients or to, we used it, I think, in a webinar that we did. So same design, slightly different, layout, but every KPI has its own tile. And if your photos don't turn out so well, just go to Andy's Tableau public profile. It's all on there. You can download it, see how he did it. And then he also, after I had a question about a support ticket dashboard, he used the same design again and found a data set about support tickets for an IT company and applied the same techniques to create a different dashboard that is also mobile friendly, where every tile kind of displays on your mobile screen. So taking inspiration from the original that Lindsay created, that was a scorecard for the Washington transport system, to actually just using it for different topics, which is a great idea. Now here's a viz created by Klaus. He's going to be in IronViz tomorrow. He created this for Makeover Monday, and this is a Premier League data set about where the different teams finished and where they were predicted to finish. And I really like the simplicity of it and the ease of understanding. It's, nice, simple layout. So you have in the black boxes, that's the actual finish, and then yellow is where they were predicted to finish. Did they do better or worse than the prediction? And why not just change this, for example, to look at the different countries in your data set and see where they finished in terms of sales. I literally did this very quickly by simply changing the alias of the fields. I didn't even use a different data set. So I just needed something very quick for this presentation. But why not? You could apply different visualizations for different purposes. And whether it's the Makeover Monday visualizations that you see on Twitter or data.world, or many other ones you find in the Tableau community, take inspiration. There is no harm in reusing something. If you create something that you publish, it's always a good thing to acknowledge the original author and tell people, thanks for your inspiration. But in general, take the inspiration, you don't have to reinvent the wheel. And there's some really good stuff out there. A couple of other examples. We looked at the melting of the Arctic ice cap, and someone created this visualization of the meltdown. And what I really like, it's a nice long-form dashboard, and it tells the story, and they've annotated specific data points with these annotations that also flow down in the same structure that the line chart progresses down as the ice cap melts. And I really like how they communicate the emotion, but also provide some information and something thought-provoking. And why not have something, maybe it's information about your team or your organization, displayed very simply in this format and even print it out, hang it on the wall and make it part of the whole corporate identity around your office. I think the data visualization gallery that you see in this community area out in the hallway is a really great example of how good data visualizations can look when you print them out. And then lastly, here's an animation. So same data set, the melting of the Arctic ice cap. And what I really like about animations is you don't need anyone to do interactivity on a dashboard. They don't need to click anything. They don't need to explore. They can just sit there and watch it. And if they don't understand it at the first glance, after a few rounds of this animation, they will understand what's going on and what the data shows. So animations can be a good way, maybe in a meeting, to just show something that you've prepared where there's no risk of Wi-Fi dropping or things, you having to click on something and it doesn't really filter, but prepare an animation and just let it work its magic, have an impact on people. And the motion and the movement is something people really respond to. Okay, so for our executives and decision makers in the room, I know there's just a couple of you, but this will probably also be interesting for others to hear. My suggestion is to be open to new ideas. So for you, it's not so much about building data visualizations or analyzing the data, but more to make the decisions based on the insights your analysts provide. And you're in charge of making decisions relating to the organization, what software to buy. Maybe it's about company-wide training programs. But what you also have, and what probably a lot of your people don't have to the same level, is the connection to so many others in the same role, so many other influencers and decision makers. And so you have the opportunity to change things and to also, to lead from the front, but also to connect other people with your network and to let them be inspired by your network. It's around encouraging growth in your organization. If you don't let people do certain things, they probably won't, or they will try and do it in their spare time and then get a bit frustrated that they just kind of run out of hours in the day. So make it possible for your people to grow and to create value in and for your organization. Setting the right tone at the top is really important, so let's have a look how we can do that. On the one hand, it's about encouraging your people to leave their comfort zone and to make it okay to challenge the status quo. Giving them room to grow, develop and improve, and to say, it's okay if you don't have to get it right first time. Let's try and let's experiment. But then also being open to new ideas that come from your people, so they might actually feed you back new ideas that you can apply. Like I said before, if they're anything like the people in the rest of the Tableau community, then they're really driven for change and they're driven to improve and to learn and to grow. So make use of that and really don't kill their vibe. You will need some of the right tools and provide a bit of guidance and inspiration along the way. First up, you have the questions, your team is tasked with finding the answers. So give them a bit of space to do that. But what do they need to be successful in that process? Here's some of the right ingredients that I want to suggest. One is enabling technologies. So providing people with the right tools and software to make the change, to use those tools effectively. From my own experience, I remember when I started at Commonwealth Bank, I came straight from Deloitte Consulting. Obviously, it's quite different environments, and it took 2 days until I had an email address. It took a whole week until I was connected to the right systems. And for me as a consultant or ex-consultant, a week of not adding any value was quite stressful, and I was really frustrated. So I would suggest let's make sure the technology is right. It should enable, it should kind of be in the background. It shouldn't really be a topic of frustration and debate. It should be something like, oh my God, that was easy. So let's try and make that happen. Inspiration from your network, that is a really key one. You are connected to other leaders who've gone through change and transformation, who've done things with data for their organizations, and they can come and talk to your people. I understand it's not always possible to send everyone to a great conference where they will come out motivated and feeling like $1 million. But why not invite someone externally to your company and let them talk and let them inspire your people? And if you don't have someone who can talk about data and the change they've made with it, why not get someone from the Tableau community? Because there are actually a lot of people willing to talk, clearly. And it's about, you have Zen masters, you have ambassadors, you have leaders from Tableau who are happy to talk, but also there's other people in the Tableau community who do things, who lead Tableau user groups, etc. And they're willing to talk to your people about the community, about specific technical topics. You can get someone coming in to do a very structured technical session on something for 2 hours or so. So please, as you roam around this conference, talk to people and see what they're interested in. If it's something that you want to do, just find the right people and get them locked in and visiting your company. And then also it's about creating a sharing culture. And being German, and for the last couple of years now I've worked in Germany. Previously I lived abroad, so that's now my first job in Germany, working with Germans in German. And what I noticed is that this whole idea of sharing what you know is still not as accepted as it is in Anglo-Saxon countries. And I think it's a fear of, well, if I share my knowledge, what use is there for me? Like, I'm making myself replaceable. But no, if you share your knowledge, you make everyone else better. You make everyone else more knowledgeable and more valuable to the company. But also, I don't think it makes anyone replaceable because, you know, you're still unique. So enabling that sharing culture and making it okay and not scary to share your information and your knowledge is a good thing. A few ideas around that would be something like weekly or fortnightly lunch and learn sessions. I'm a huge fan of just getting people together, and whoever wants to attend can attend. Someone prepares a topic, a talk, maybe a demo, maybe it's just a discussion, and having then people gather around and learn from each other. Because there's so much they can teach each other. They don't always need to be taught from the top or from someone externally. Alternatively, projects like Makeover Monday or the other ones, Workout Wednesday, Sports Viz Sunday, whatever it may be, let people do that in their work time. And I know if I said that in other settings, people would be like, but it's not work related. We can't do this in our work time. Well, why not? It's so much more interesting to work with different data sets, not just the company data all the time. It's also a lot less risky, and let's just try something and then apply what we learned and what we created to our work environment. And it's a free opportunity to learn. These things happen regularly. Workout Wednesday happens every week. Makeover Monday happens every week. We make it, or we suggest to people that they make it an appointment for themselves that's their own weekly professional development session that they can do for themselves or as a team in their organization. You also, as leaders, have the opportunity to create connection, and there are many different ways in this community to connect to people and to build your network. And here's a couple of them. Makeover Monday Live. This picture is from last year at the London conference. Last year we had about 42 people. Yesterday when we ran Makeover Monday Live, we had 102. And in the previous picture that I showed in Las Vegas last year, we had 500. So this is a great way to get people in the room. They connect online through the social networks as they go and participate every week. But then when we have live events, people come together and they're like, oh yeah, I know you from Twitter. Have never spoken to you, but here we are. And people know so much about each other already. They've got topics to talk about because they're all working on the same thing. It's a very easy way to get connected. Andy and I also offer to do these live sessions in organizations. It doesn't have to be an open official meetup. It could just be something at your organization. So we've done that for different companies, including Westpac Bank in Australia. And it works really well. It's getting people in the room doing things together. This is what it looks like in action. People just sitting at a table, everyone with the laptop, working on visualizations, but also helping each other. So we're there to answer questions, but people can help each other and just say, hey, how do I do this calculation? Or this table calculation is quite working, can you help me out? Alternatively, and this isn't Tableau specific, are hackathons. And the reason why I've included them is because I've participated in a few myself. This one was done for the NRL in Sydney last year, and I attended. And yes, you can attend, but you can also host or sponsor these things. So the way this worked was we were given a data set from the NRL, it's about player performance, etc., ahead of time, and then we came together for a day. Facebook were hosting it at their offices, Precision Sourcing is a recruitment company, they were officially organizing it, and we all sat there in our teams and we were working on the data, creating visualizations, different people in each team. And then at the end of the day, we presented back to the NRL. So they had some officials there, a few players, there's beers, pizza, it's quite simple actually, but you get so much talent in a room. And if you host it and you want to advertise yourself as a data company, as someone who's hiring great people, this is a great place to get so many potentials in a room. You can also host a tug. A Tableau user group is a great place to find Tableau talent, but also just to be part of the community. And this is a picture from the London tug, and the London tug has about 100 to 130 attendees every time, and they run every 4 to 6 weeks. So typically they're at the Tableau office, but if you have a great venue and you want to host it, why not offer that to the TUG leaders? So some of them, I don't think there's anyone in the room. Oh yeah, Nick Bignell's in the room. So he's there, and there's also Ulrich from Credit Suisse, and he also runs a TUG. So talk to people if you want to host that and showcase yourself as an employer, as a company, as a Tableau customer and part of the Tableau community. And then this is not a stock photo. This is actually what the TUG looks like. Just people working together on visualization problems. And there's some technical talks. There's talks about topics like this, culture change, etc., customer talks. So it's really diverse and interesting environment. So what's next? Where do you go from here with the information and my suggestions? For the analysts and the developers, information designers, I want to suggest that you connect, you learn, and you have fun. So talk to as many people as you possibly can while you're here at the conference. Find out about the topics that interest you. So when you go to a talk and it doesn't turn out the way you want, you just walk straight out and go to the next one, because there's so much happening in parallel. You're probably missing some that you wanted to go to, but don't feel bad about walking out. Connect with experts and people at Tableau themselves. The Tableau staff are here to help you. It's really good if you don't always have to go the formal way through support, but you just have someone who you trust and who can help you and who you're connected with. So build your network while you're here. And then, of course, enjoy the different talks lined up on the agenda and data night out this evening. For the team leaders and influencers, it's probably more about also finding ideas and ways that you can challenge your team when you come back home and engage people in a different way based on the customer sessions that you've listened to, maybe some technical sessions and other inspiration from keynotes. Talk to the customers and partners that you find at this conference that already do what you want to do and ask them how they got there. People are so happy to share their information. Of course, they might not share their confidential data, but the approach is usually not a secret. So ask them all the questions that you have. And then try and find ways that you can just bring more variety back to your team with different things, different maybe challenges, etc. And for our executives and decision makers, empower your people and let people attend TC18 in the US if in any way possible, because hopefully you're already enjoying the vibe here, but the US is like, it's another planet. It's completely crazy, and it's the most fun you can have with data nerds for a week in the US. Also, let your people shine and bring their ideas to you and to the organization, show you how they can add value, and then take inspiration from the impressions that you've collected here and take some of that back home. Share it with your people and let them know what you got out of the talks, the different sessions, and the keynotes that you heard. And giving people a little more freedom to challenge the status quo, getting outside their comfort zone so that they can add value and they can be their best selves at work, but also take your organization to the next level. And with that, I'm happy to take questions, and I thank you for listening. Does anyone have any questions? No? If you do think of something later on, you can find me at the XSL booth in, oh, there's a question. Sorry, I didn't see you there. I'll bring you the mic. And while I walk, I am at the XSL booth most of the time during this conference, and alternatively, as you see me walking around, just stop me and talk to me if you have something.
Yeah, you mentioned, when we develop a dashboard, first of all, we need to ask our client or whatever, what is the question they want to answer using this dashboard. And in my reality, there is a bunch of 2 pages of questions they want to answer using this dashboard. How do I react? I tell them I'm going to make 20 dashboards to answer each and every question, or I consolidate?
Okay, that's a great question. So what I always ask people then is, what's the most important ones? Maybe the 3 most important questions they really want to know. Because a lot of the time, the questions they have, they build on what's already there, and they may be just a drill down or a filter or something applied. So they say, I want to see sales for this product. I want to see sales for this product for this country. So if it just goes into the detail, you can probably create a smart way of drilling down. Alternatively, I would say, okay, let's start with the 3 most important questions. You create a dashboard and you say, here is the answer for those 3 questions. What should we tackle next? So I would make that an iterative process rather than trying to tackle all 20 questions at once, because that will take you a lot longer and you might go down rabbit holes, and then you spend a lot of time potentially wasting some time that doesn't lead you to the outcome you want. So I would say let's start with the most important ones and go from there. What we typically get at home at Exasol is someone coming and saying, oh, I really want to know this. Okay, so we try as much as we can to anticipate and to actually do analysis proactively and not just build dashboards on request. But at the point where we are in our development is that there's just still so much need for some standard dashboards where people have control over their departments that we're still creating a lot of dashboards on request. But as we see things, we then try and proactively communicate and say, hey, have you noticed this actually, and what should we do about it? But we try and keep the dashboards quite simple and then build on that basis of the first overview dashboard and say, okay, let's go from here. What's the next step? And what question do you want to ask now? From a technical perspective, I wouldn't put everything into a single page because that just will drive you bonkers. I would break it down into topics, or depending on what the context is, but really to break it down so that you navigate from one page to the next as you go into more detail.
Okay, thank you.
Pleasure. Any other questions? Yes, there's one over there, so I will get my steps in so that Garmin tells me I've done my job. Okay. Ali, pleasure.
You showed a slide with 15 vises.
Yeah.
How did you decide, or what process do you sort of go through to decide on the one?
Yes, so for the demo, this is the ozone viz you're relating to?
15 there.
Yeah.
There was a question of, is there certain questions you're asking or a process you go through that goes from the 15 to decide on the one?
Yeah, so for this purpose, the ozone dashboard that I built, where I showed you the grid of the different visualizations that I went through to get to the final outcome, the purpose of the demo was, okay, I want to showcase how you can really quickly visualize data in Tableau, and it's large data volumes stored in Exasol. So I wanted a visualization that visually kind of pops out, but people could easily interact with by hovering or clicking on dots. Also something that's easy to understand at first glance. Some of the others, the maps, I actually created another couple of dashboards that I would use as well. But I mean, sometimes, I'll be the first to admit, I just pick things because they look good. It depends if I want to draw people's attention or I have someone in the business who really needs some information. So if it's drawing attention, then I need a really impactful visual first. But if it's about really communicating information, I will probably create something a lot simpler, but annotate it and lay it out in a way that I can then, through interactivity, get to other information as well. Cool. Any other questions from the audience? Okay, so with about 5 minutes left, you're free to go. I hope you'll find lots of other sessions, but I also want to make a quick shout out for a Data Plus Women panel that we have this afternoon. It's just before Data Night Out, so it starts at 5:30, and it'll be great to see lots of you there for some discussions and hopefully some insightful sharing on stage. So thanks for coming, and please also rate the session in the app. Thank you.